All must reduce food loss and waste through effective, transparent governance. Every year, industrialized countries waste about 670 million tons of food, where developing countries lose 630 million tons. Globally, the total lost food globally is about 2.3 billion tons. So 1/3 of the world's food is wasted. If I go by country, Finland wastes about 23 kilograms per individual every year. Norway wastes about 51 kilograms of food every year. In Belgium and Netherlands, the figure is about 47 kilograms of food per person every year. So effort should be made that when we talking about making food available to all, the structure should be made possible that places of deficit are also covered. What new direction can we achieve? If we increase investment in agriculture to feed humans, but not cars, then we'll build real food security. Massive, appropriate development linked to rural economic activities. Development of an internal capacity to achieve an internally sustained agricultural growth. That development of the productive resources to create employment and eradicate the structural deficit that underlined poverty. To ensure fair access to food for all, but avoiding unnecessary waste and loss. Inculcate consumer behavior modification that is essential to avoid the spurious quality standards that result in so much waste globally. At this stage, I'm going to ask all of you to co-create together, which will be the main thing we'll be doing after lunch. I want how we can think constructively together. And in doing that, everybody has to speak for yourself, think from your own situation and experiences. You have to participate actively, focus primarily on the things you can influence, focus on the present and the future. Do not blame anybody. Recognize that we perceive the world differently. When we have that in the background, then we can then define the factors that impact on food sovereignty of countries. And this we'll do together under 3 themes. The first theme is the right to food, ethics of food trade and governance. The questions are in your folders. The second theme will be land and water rights and use, their impact on agriculture and the environment. And the third will be the tools for building capacity and knowledge among small-scale farmers. This, if you answer the questions that come and we prioritize them, we'll be able to at least formulate some policies which can be given to those who make policies as a contribution from Vegitrade. Thank you.
So, good morning, everybody. I am going to talk to you about fresh produce, food safety and quality standards. And I will present the outcome of an online survey that we performed in the frame of Vegitrade. My talk will have the following structure. I will start with the introduction, then I will go to the purpose of the study, the setting up of the online survey, for example, what were the type of standards that were covered, what were the themes of the survey, who were the participants, what were the type of questioning, and then I will go to the results and the conclusions. So, as we all know now, food sovereignty is a very broad concept, and it addresses many themes such as land use, food security, food dumping, GMO seeds, fair trade. And in this study, we identified fresh produce standards as one of the bridges between Vegitrade and food sovereignty. In fact, fresh produce standards, they have an impact on the safety of the fresh produce, but they also have an impact on the trade. Can the trade go on or can it not go on? And they also have an impact on the functioning of the chain. For example, on the farmers, on their market access. And there are many different concerns that are linked to these fresh produce standards. There are also opportunities. And it is about these opportunities and concerns, food sovereignty concerns, that the online survey deals with. So the purpose of the study was to collect, via an online survey, opinions from experts from the fresh produce supply chain on concerns and opportunities related to food safety and quality standards and legislation. It was also the purpose to compare the opinions from experts working with farmers from the global south with the opinions from experts working with farmers from the global north. And the themes were, for example, are the costs of implementation and certification of standards, are they shared equally along the chain? Are standards, can they be seen as non-tariff barriers to trade? Are standards excluding farmers from high-value markets? Can standards be seen as a catalyst to trade? And what's the role of private standards versus legislation? But before I continue, I would like first to give a short definition of what our standards are. Standards are written guidelines which help to do things or make things more efficiently or safely. All standards take the form of either specifications, methods, vocabularies, codes of practice, or guides. So in fact, a standard is a document that tells the farmer how he has to work, process standards. But it also includes product standards, and that tells how the product should look like at the end. How many pesticides can there be in? What type of pathogens should be absent? So process standards and product standards. And in this survey, we defined 4 groups of standards. The first group is the Codex Alimentarius standards. The second group are the EU legislation. The third group are the national standards. And the fourth group are the private standards. So the first group, the Codex Alimentarius standards. So since the sanitary and phytosanitary agreements by WTO in 1995, these standards serve as a basis for trade. Member states can deviate from these standards if they do this via scientific risk assessments. Which standard schemes are there for fresh produce? There are the process standards, general principles of food hygiene, and the code of hygienic practice for fresh fruits and vegetables. There's also standards on contaminants, for example, lead and cadmium in vegetables. And there are also standards on pesticide residues which can be contacted or seen in an online database. The second group is the EU legislation, and all products that enter or get out or are exported from EU, they need to comply with the EU legislation. So the basis is the General Food Law, which contains, for example, also the requirements for traceability. There's also regulation on microbiological criteria. For example, salmonella should be absent in fresh cut fruits. There's also regulation on pesticide residues, a regulation on contaminants in foodstuffs, and there are marketing standards for 10 types of fruits and vegetables, such as apples, pears, tomatoes, table grapes, and some others. The third group is the national legislation, and the national legislation is defined by one country. And for example, it is Russia has its own MRLs for pesticide residues on apples and tomatoes. And the fourth group, these are the private standards. And private standards contain, on the one hand, standards that are made by collective standards that are made by companies, a group of companies. For example, Global Gap and Vegaplan for Belgium. So they're made by a group. And then you also have the private individual standards. So they are made by one private individual company. So there were also some prerequisites for the participants. Targeted participants were experts working with farmers from all over the world. So we questioned experts working with farmers and not directly farmers, because we thought it was more feasible to interview the experts than the farmers directly.